Hey there, what's happening? Sharpen those buster swords for cinema recap, cause today we're getting into Monster Hunter, a film about how to not solo Fatalis. So eat up, holster the swords, and let's dig into this. Spoilers ahead. Land ho, and welcome to the new world. Or rather, this entire ship is just sailing on the lands of a desert. Our cute handler over there is scoping the scene, while Hellboy over here seems to be mapping out the lands. The rest of the crew doing their own thing, until what he said. The monster known as Diablos shakes the entire ship up, and it causes them to sideswipe a rock. Diablos continues to harass the ship until some of the men fall victim to him or go overboard. This man's lucky to only fall victim to the sand. Snap back to our world, and did Monster Hunter just turn into an FPS game? The random soldier is apparently from a scavenged recording device, where it sounds like they were sending a distress signal. Seems like these band of soldiers are on a search and rescue mission. This is Captain Artemis, the leader of these merry men and women of firearms. They find a lead to their search and zooms out. A drive later, and they stumble upon a few stone markers on the road. Guess these armed dudes are pretty relaxed as they banter and listen to music.
You see those markers? Yeah, I see them.
Soon, they meet Link, the Sergeant Epps dude with the AWP. He says he found some tracks and that most likely they were left by Bravo Team. Is Bravo Team always going missing in these Capcom IPs? Well, the track suddenly just stopped, as if it disappeared. Then a storm of lightning and dark clouds ambushes them. They think some hostile soldier might be out in that cloud cluster, so they roll out. The soldiers think of their loved ones, cause they might think some attack might come for them.
In case I get my head blown off, they can still tell who I am.
But going inside the storm, they're instead greeted by clouds. The lightning strikes the rock makers, and a portal opens. A portal to a cliff, mind you. The Humvee tumbles over and we get some Michael Bay-esque slow-mos. They land disoriented by the storm, but they're mostly alright. They see the storm passing away, so Artemis checks the map. But the map doesn't make sense, because it feels like they're in a totally foreign place.
I don't see any structures or mountains marked on this map.
Marshall says all navigation and electronics are fried, even the compass. Artemis's plan is to hike this joint until they arrive to base or get their comms back on. Then Axe finds something, or what's left of them. Looks like it reeks too. Link thinks that it might be the doing of flamethrowers. Captain Artemis thinks otherwise cause napalm doesn't burn that hot. They find glass scattered all over the place, and Artemis comments that when the temps are high enough, sand can turn into glass. Bravo Team, game ended while fighting, but they didn't find the bodies of any enemy. Sensing danger, Captain says the team should keep moving. Nothing seems right, so what better time than to break into song.
Oh, how I wanna go, but they won't let me go.
Out in the distance, some dude with a giant bow notices them, mainly because of their loud singing, which is totally helping reveal that position in an ambush. Dash stops the Humvee as they see something to behold, something that Marshall reacts to be bigger than a dinosaur. The size of that skeleton shouts no dinosaur. Suddenly, the hunter with the colossal bow shoots. It lands above Artemis, but her soldiers fire back at this so-called attacker. Artemis asks to cease fire because the shot just spreads chalk, as if it were a warning shot for something else. Oh boy, boss battle already. Whatever's digging gains on the convoy, so they open fire. Out comes a flurry of lead, but Diablos leaps and overturns one of the crew's vehicles, and then Diablos shows its full form, only to bellow a mighty roar. They try to help the other vehicle, but they get rammed by sharp horns. Artemis opens fire again and they give chase. Then the captain commands for the RPG. Too bad Diablos knocks him over like a bag of potatoes. The hunter is still on their tail. Then one gets game ended by those horns. He leaves it though with a parting gift of grenades. Too bad, bud. It's a Souls game, so the martyrdom perk doesn't work here. The rest fall back to the rocky impasse. Then the hunter fires an explosive arrow, enough to distract Diablos for a few seconds. But oh well, the soldiers are already secured inside the cave, so Diablos retreats to the sand for now. That, my dear, was the tutorial boss. Dash then says the lightning took them to this place, so they gotta get back to it, but she just panics. Artemis busts out the old fight or be food speech, and then a giant spider stings her from above. I'm gonna say they're somewhere in Australia. The big bug is fended off, and they give the captain CPR, but they're suddenly faced with a horde of these 8-legged freaks. They abandon the captain's body and get their way through the arachnids. Then the hunter shows up and gives them support fire from afar, but he gets swarmed as well. Following the remaining rangers, Marshall turns into a KFC drive-thru while the hunter retreats to a secret cave. Sometime later, the captain is alive and awake. She could only hear the screams of Link and Dash. Then she got stabbed another time.
Dash.
A few hours in, and rise and shine, it's a very dirty silk cocoon. She sees Dash is no more, and it all makes sense as she sees that she's also in the nest of these giant buggers. Artemis feeling woozy, but finds an oxygen can, some flares, and some ammo left in her supplies. She's scaling through the cave with the flare. It's Link! Oh, he's got a little ouchie on his chest, so Artemis helps him up.
Come on.
Her flare runs out, but they could see the exit, so Artemis lights another flare, but boo, it's another giant spider. Then they reveal a few annoying pimples, then he's Spider Chow. The Cap didn't get her share of Link's stew, so she rudely blasts them with an improvised flamethrower. With Mr. Krabs on fire, she's crawling to the exit, but she turns into Sam Raimi's horror movie, Drag Me to Hell. The captain's prepared with some fireworks to play with and seizes her chance to bug out of there. The rest of the 8-legged freaks want to follow her, but they're too busy morbing. Looks like the captain's safe for now, and even recovers her wedding ring. Then she excruciatingly closes her wound with some gunpowder and rocks. Soon, it's off to desert paradise with her. Scaling that hill reveals that there's gonna be thousands of miles of sand. Finding a pile of rocks near the peak, she throws one onto the sand and behold, it's the Rex-like creature, Diablos. It's waiting in the sand for a meal, but finds nothing, so it goes back into the sand. Artemis retreats by scaling down, and then the hunter follows her. A few minutes pass by, and she stumbles upon a shipwreck. Wood, rope, and hooks as far as the eye can see. She climbs down into one of the hulls of the ship, but a sudden dash for effect and the hunter has her at knife point. He speaks some snake tongue, then she drops her knife, only to fight back. Place your bets, people. Money's on the Cap. Looks like I win because she stabs him in the chest. Then he shrugs it off. Guess I lost the bet. Okay. Artemis gets dragged to a cave near the freaky giant spider mounds, and then put into a secret cave where the hunter takes refuge in. He drinks some water, and then eats some disgusting moss. Those spider things look like they found their way into a little hidey hole, but eventually they go away. The hunter prays, while Artemis quietly slices off her restraints with a small blade. Morning arrives, and the hunter scouts his surroundings. Things are still the same, so he goes back and bonk. The classic switcheroo. Artemis takes a swig of the gamer Sprite he has, but he gets pissed and kicks it off. So Artemis does the next sensible thing and attacks the man's religion.
You don't like that, huh?
This entire dispute is essentially like the entirety of Twitter, except these two duke it out in a cave. You know what, whatever, it is Twitter. A few grapples here and there, and man, they keep spamming throws. Is this what two king mains look like in Tekken? Eventually, it leads to Artemis saving the hunter from those giant freaky spiders, and she frees him. At first, the hunter is hesitant to trust her, but Artemis whips out a tacky Hershey's sponsor. How that didn't melt in her pocket in that heat? Guess the hunter has chocolate fever. Then the hunter gives some water in return.
Chocolate.
The two take a little walk and agree that they need to get to the lightning storm in order to get home, but Diablos is still out there on patrol, slithering through the sand with sinister intent. The hunter leads her back to the colony of Nerscylla, those freaky spider things, and suggests they get their hands on Nerscylla's venom to poison Diablos. Artemis agrees, so the mighty fine idea to do for Captain Artemis
What?
is for her to show off those hillbilly singing skills and attract Nerscylla. It works, but now she has to worry about one thing: staying alive. The Nerscylla falls for the trap and nearly stabs Artemis a few times. Good thing the hunter jumps from a great height to slice that head in half. He slices that stinger as well, and they book it, because the other ones are starting to swarm and chase him. Back at the cave, the hunter plays with a little Velcro of the Rangers from Artemis. Those buggers are really trying to dig into the cave. The hunter then prays to the lost spirits of his loved ones. Then he utters one word. Time for a little preparation montage. Some of this looks very gross, like extracting the venom tip of the Nursilla stinger. So they prepare their equipment and make their way to the abandoned and trashed ship, where they salvage it for parts. Then they practice with their grappling hook shots. And now for the mother lode they found in the chest. These two blades reminiscent of Kratos' Blades of Chaos. They practice with those, and it even glows like the Blades of Chaos. Artemis finds this feature out in surprise and the hunter laughs it off. Later on, they rig a catapult system to throw a barrel far off so that Diablos can tail it. Then the two make their way for the destroyed Humvee. They suddenly stop, and at the perfect time they split apart, the hunter being the bait. Diablos catches up and throws him in the air. But this guy could totally be in FaZe Clan cause he nails a killer shot of Nursilla venom to Diablos' eye. The hunter makes a run for it, but Diablo sweeps him off with his tail. Then Artemis grabs his attention, unloading a flurry of fury with 6 barrels. That's until she runs out of ammo, but Diablos is beginning to lose his vision and get dizzy. So the next thing to do, a rocket launch it to the face. Too bad, Diablos rams the Humvee with Artemis in it. And she finds herself at the mercy of the horned beast. Speak of the devil, it's the hunter. He stabs Diablos' head with that comically small sword, but he shakes him off. It's up to our friendly neighborhood ranger, Artemis, to grapple up there and turn it into a rodeo. Now that she's taken the reins, she stabs the sword deeper, and Diablo slowly collapses, rocking back and forth before being game-ended against the rock formation. Boss fight done. So, time to loot. Or, see if Hunter's okay. Well, she does loot a single piece of scale, but no armor sets, no swords, it's a waste. She uses the slice scale at Diablos as a makeshift stretcher to drag the hunter's unconscious body through the harsh desert. Then the hunter wakes up for a bit, only for Artemis to attempt to resuscitate him with some leftover medical equipment she found earlier. Then they're buried alive in the sand, the end roll credits. Obviously I'm kidding, they dig themselves out and the hunter is alive. What, no thank you? It's rude. They continue their trek through the desert to make their way towards the lightning storm. Then they find a life-filled oasis. There's plants, water, and even some apsa roses as far as the eye can see. With the relaxing scenery, Artemis says she's gonna get some water. But then some freak of nature jumps out of the sand and tries to chew her face off. The hunter takes care of that creature and I guess this is what you call, it's just a prank, bro.
You're funny.
Oh, that prank-loving hunter. Later, they cook the Cephalos that the hunter beheaded, and Artemis remarks that it smells good. And she's in for a surprise because it tastes good too. It's really the slow roast and impending demise that adds to that flavor. They share a few laughs and drinks until dusk arrives. Lights out. So, guns or swords out. Something big is coming, and these two can sense it. Suddenly, a bright fire is seen from the distance. The hunter calls it Rathalos. Artemis wants to know what Rathalos is, but the Apsaros herd comes in and starts a stampede. They take cover, and then some bulky dude with a big glowing buster sword jumps out of nowhere and clears that herd. Artemis helps clear a path, and then the hunter gets saved by the cute handler from the beginning. In fact, everyone else from the ship crew comes to save both of them from being run over by the herd of Apsaroses, and the grim fate of plummeting down a cliff. The herd is cleared, and we can all say our thanks to that Hellboy-looking guy. Hey, that's a mean jab. Artemis is down for the count.
Don't thank me yet.
Much later, the cute handler is taking a bit of a female gaze at Artemis being in a cage like a zoo animal. Then the hunter arrives to clear the crowd. Artemis signals her chains, and then she walks off. She sees a trapdoor leading underground, and then a bell rings. She uses the bell as cover for her busting the trapdoor's lock open with a table. Then she dives into the cellar. She approaches the knives, and my god, it's a furry. It growls at her, and then the hunter comes to escort her away from the Palico, the cat iron chef. Cooks a mean steak too. The hunter brings Artemis to their leader, the Admiral, and he unchains her because the hunter vouched for her. The Admiral says he's afraid of Artemis's world and what it could do to him. He also says that there were others that came before her, and through that, the Admiral learned English. The Admiral states there is a portal on the Sky Tower used by the ancients to travel across worlds, which is guarded by a Rathalos. Artemis agrees to help. Then the Palico delivers some tasty snacks with a side of cat hair.
You don't have cats in your world?
The very next day, they leave for that tower. The Admiral asks if Artemis is ready, and he says that there's a hard climb ahead of them, so they're off. But not before the Palico winks at her. They're quite the sizable crew, and the journey begins. The scenes are breathtaking, from grassy mountains to ancient temples and magma-filled peaks. After the myriad of places they had to climb through, they finally reach the tower, and the Admiral says the lava powers the tower, making the tower in turn whip up a storm. The storm is also the one creating the gateway, but it's shaky. The rain pours. Then they find some glass. Rathalos is nearby. They split up and take their positions for an all-out attack. After a brief moment of silence, giant wing flaps can be heard, and the bonfire is lit. He's no Fatalis, but here's Rathalos, the fire-breathing final boss. It spots the Artemis and Hunter, ready to turn him into a bucket of KFC, but the Admiral fights fire with fire. The big dragon dodges, and the remaining crew go after it. Weapons hot, swords a-glowing, arrows shot, blades are carved. Sadly, they're obviously having a hard time with this big bozo, and some of the ancient markers on the road to the tower glow. The portal opens, and the dragon throws Artemis off. It goes for the flame-throwing attack, but Artemis jumps into that portal. This will likely cause a seizure in all honesty. Wakey wakey eggs and bakey. Looks like she's back in her world, as she's getting picked up by a rescue team. In fact, a squadron. We got birds, tanks, and foot soldiers. She's brought to the Osprey, and she's hooked to some meds while she's tripping out. They question her on where her men are, but they're instead greeted by Rathalos. It bites that cockpit off, and the Osprey crashes. The squadron go after it, but again, this is a fantasy-only Gmod RP server, so FPS weapons have no effect on this guy. Rathalos makes quick work of the squadron, including the tanks. More Ospreys come to attack it, but it's just too OP. Then it rips the wings of a surveillance plane off. Now it's just Artemis and the dragon, so she hooks on it and tears a large scar. Rathalos inspects that wound and it obviously gets angry, so it bellows for its devastating fire breath. Artemis takes the chance, quickly igniting one of the arrowheads, and with just an excellent amount of accuracy, she fires, and it blows up the volatile lighter fluid in its mouth, killing it. Got him! Time for round 2. Just as Artemis was about to turn into Dragon Chow, an explosion on its neck occurs. It's the Hunter. He lets out a barrage of explosive arrows, then once he sees the open wound, it's time for an astonishing gamer shot. The arrow flies right into that wound, igniting the fluids inside Rathalos once more, and turning him into that Michael Bay scene. Well, that was too easy of a second round, but Artemis is just glad to have the Hunter's assistance. They share a relieving handshake. Then the Hunter asks for some more chocolate. I mean, obviously, right? Who could resist? Out on the horizon, a shadowy figure emerges. It's the Admiral and his crew. For what it's worth, the Admiral does express his responsibility for the monsters. And then another storm brews up again. I hope it's Virgil this time. Not too bad, because it's Gore Magala. Sadly, not the Armor Girls version. Artemis says they have to shut down this tower, but the Admiral says survival through this comes first, with one last all-out attack. And that was all for Monster Hunter. I don't know, what'd you think about this vicious movie? Why don't you go ahead and let us know in those comments with the hashtag #CinemaRecap. Again, this was Monster Hunter by Toho Co., starring Mila Jovovich, Tony Jaa, and Ron Perlman. Thank you once again for watching and being with us. Until that next armor grind, see you later.